Good morning. Ross asked me just to share a snippet of life with my mum as a child, and I thought about when I was really young, probably about less than 4 years old. I used to suffer with chronic ear problems, and my mum took 2 of my dad's woolen socks and she filled them with salt and she would leave them in the oven at night, and when I'd be in pain she would hear me whimpering and come and bring the socks and help the pain with the socks filled with salt. And that really impacted my life in a great many ways. And when I was at school, I remember people saying, the teachers asking us, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I really, really wanted to be a mother, just like my mother. And thank God I have had the opportunity to have 3 of my own children, and I love them dearly. And we've managed to bring along other people into our lives that I've had an opportunity to do a little bit of mothering in their lives as well. So I want to say Happy Mother's Day to all the mums today. Have a great time and relax. Let them do breakfast for you. Let them do everything for you. And have a great day. Happy Mother's Day.
Good morning. I'm Pastor Ross Taylor from Life Church Ingham. And I'd like to just talk to you on this Mother's Day about the great influence that mothers certainly do have over their families. And I certainly think of my own mother in this particular case. But right now, let me just open with a passage of Scripture where Paul is writing to a young pastor called Timothy, and he talks about how the faith that he sees in Timothy has been instilled by not only his mother, but also his grandmother. Pick it up. It's in 2 Timothy and in chapter 1 and verse 5. It says, "When I called to remembrance the genuine faith that is in you, which dwelt first in your grandmother Lois, and your mother Eunice, I am persuaded is in you also." My mother grew up in, basically I was growing up in a Methodist church, and my mother took me to Sunday school and church every Sunday, and gave me a great understanding of what Christianity was about. I never really made a personal commitment to Christ in those years, but later it would certainly come forth and bear much fruit, certainly in my 30s. It's interesting. Ralph Emerson said this. He said, "Men are what their mothers make them." It's long been recognised that mothers have an incredible influence over their children, over their families. Family, of course, is a place where children can grow up and learn to become mature, to be fruit-bearing, to be life-giving, to receive and to give protection. They can receive and give support and learn social interactions, and those social interactions will last a lifetime. I want to think about the things that my mother instilled into me, and I think that they were good thoughts. She gave me direction in my life. She gave me correction and affection. So those 3 things I want to just talk about this morning: direction, correction, and affection. I picked up a mother's card in a shop the other day, and on the front of it said, "Mum, I remember the little prayer you used to say for me every day." I thought, oh, this will be good. I'll have a look, see what this says. And as I opened it, it read inside, "God help you if you ever do that again." I thought, oh, okay, that sounds like my mum. Yep. But she did. No, my mother gave direction to my life in a number of different ways. She'd always be there in front. She'd always show us an example. She showed me an example in prayer. She showed me an example in getting up early in the morning, and the discipline in her life to get things done in the proper order and in the proper framework was always crystal clear. She never actually sort of necessarily explained all that to me, but I quickly learnt from it. And, I think of when John says and records Jesus saying, "I am the way, the truth, and the life," and Jesus saying, "Well, follow me in those directions." And certainly my mother was good at giving those directions. She set the example. Basically I could hear her saying, "Ross, I am the way, the truth, and the life. And, follow the things that I do." And I take great heart with that. I think of the Dr. James Dobson. He's a psychologist, the founder of Focus on the Family. I remember him saying this years ago when our children were very young, and I was a young dad, and we were all growing up together. And Dobson said this. He said, "Don't expect an 8-year-old to make wise decisions. You make the decisions for them up until they're about 12 or so, and then bit by bit give them wider and wider options." And I thought, wow, that's good advice. You know, we need to give good direction to our young children, and then as they grow up, still give them direction. And in fact, you can set the course, you know, for your children looking well ahead. I know my mum did. She looked ahead and seen, you know, when I was just beginning school, she would see a time when I would go on to high school, and she could see a time when I'd go on to work and so forth. And she used to look ahead all the time and give you really clear thoughts and ideas for directions. You know, it's a bit like riding a bike across a plank, you know, that's over a gully or a river. And, you know, you ride that little plank, and if you look down at your front wheel of your bike and look at the little narrow piece of timber you're riding on, inevitably you're going to become so target fixed that you'll end up wobbling all over the place and falling off. But the trick is to look ahead. Look at 5-6 meters ahead of you and steer the course ahead of you, and you'll cross that plank without any problem. And my mother gave me those sort of directions ahead, always looking ahead, not just for the now, but looking ahead in life. I loved the way she planted good seed in my life, that sometimes I didn't always understand it, but then 4 or 5 years down the track, that seed would come to fruition. And I look back on my life and I can see her thumbprint, you know, planting good seeds into my life. Certainly as a toddler, she taught me about school life. She taught me how to understand and have a love for books, and even to an understanding of mathematics and so forth. As I grew up and became interested in you know, girls and so forth around me, she gave me good instruction and good understanding of how to treat women and how to look after them and how to deal with those things. Let me just take you to a passage of scripture in Proverbs chapter 1, and this is going to be from the like a Message Bible, quite a loose translation, but let me just read it because I think this makes really good sense. In Proverbs chapter 1, verse 8, "My child, obey the teaching of your parents, and wear their teachings as you would a lovely hat or a pretty necklace. Don't be tempted by sinners, or listen when they say, 'Come on, let's gang up and kill somebody just for the fun of it. They're well and healthy now, but we'll finish them off once and for all. We'll take their valuables and fill our homes with stolen goods. If you join our gang, you'll get your share.' Don't follow anyone like that, or do what they do. They are in a big hurry to commit some crime, perhaps even murder. They are like a bird that sees the bait but ignores the trap. They gang up to murder someone, but they are the victims. The wealth you get from crime robs you of your life." I remember a mother that wasn't my mum, but it could have well been that it was another mother who'd written across the top of her daughter's bed, "Others can, but you cannot." And that was not a restrictive command, but that was just a command saying, hey, you know, there's a lot of things in life you can do, and a lot of things you'll see your peers doing, but you don't necessarily have to fall into that trap. You don't have to be stupid enough to follow in their footsteps and be entrapped. Paul would write in the Corinthians, when he writes to them, and twice he says this, he says, "Everything is permissible to me, but not everything is beneficial." Everything is permissible, but not everything is beneficial. And that's wise counsel right there. So not only did my mother give me direction in life, but she also gave me correction. My mum was only about 5 foot something. She was quite petite. In fact, none of her daughters could actually fit into her wedding dress. She was that tiny, and I remember her all my life as quite a small woman, never, you know, but very big in terms of giving me correction. You know, I'm going back to the 50s now, so it wasn't uncommon for a leather strap to be hanging behind the kitchen cupboard. And when I'd pressed the mark too much, or gone close to the edge of being naughty, I know you'd find that hard to believe, but my mother would take a strap out from behind the counter, behind the cupboard, and she'd wear it around her neck. And like she was the sheriff. She'd put the badge on. And at that moment, I knew that I was close to the edge because if I stepped over that edge, I'd end up wearing that leather strap around the back of my legs. And yeah, anyhow, moving right along. I certainly, under no circumstance, nothing do I have of scars or any of those things left into my emotions. I just knew that my mother loved me, and it was just, she gave me good correction when I needed it. She taught me that a lot of minor adjustments were much better than one major adjustment. A little bit of a talking to, a little bit of a smack on the wrist, and I was adjusted. But if it got really serious and really bad, then there was a whole different circumstances. I remember an incident that happened in 2010. It was September the 3rd, April 2010. The Chinese coal vessel with 65,000 tonne of coal. It was the Shenang that was leaving Gladstone Harbour. It left about 3 o'clock in the afternoon with the pilot on board and steering the ship and helping the captain navigate his way away out of the harbour. He navigated till 3 o'clock in the afternoon where the pilot left the ship. At that point, the captain thought, I can make my own decisions now. And rather than take the proper channel, he decided that he would take a shortcut and he would slip around the Northwest Island and save a bit of time. The problem was, without the pilot, the captain started to lose navigational ability, and he ended up running aground and tearing a hole open in that big ship, and thousands of tonnes of crude oil poured out and did a lot of damage to the reef and was very expensive. And, it had only been literally a couple of hours from the time the pilot had left the bridge. The captain thought he could do his own thing, and within a couple of hours he was floundering and making an awful mess of things. Sometimes in life, we try to go our own way. We try to step away from those that would give us direction and correction. Whether it be our mothers, our fathers, our youth leaders, our teachers, our policemen, and so forth. And we step away from those things, and it's easy to lose our direction and flounder on the reefs of life and become very expensive repairs. Not only direction, correction, but also affection. The affection that my mother showed was great. The love that she showed, and I reflect on Peter in the New Testament. In 1 Peter chapter 4, Peter says this. He says, "The end of all things is near. Therefore, be clear-minded and self-controlled, so that you can pray. Above all, love each other deeply, because love covers over a multitude of sins. Offer hospitality to one another without grumbling." The Apostle Paul would say the same thing. He would say, you can have all the gifts in the world, but you can have all the convictions and all the truth, but without love, then you're just making an awful mess of things. You're just making a lot of noise. My mother taught me not only to have direction and correction in my life, but also to have love. And that would be the fluid or the flux, if you like, that would help me through a whole lot of things. When you're part of a family that's brought up in fear and manipulation, that becomes more of a gang than a family. I praise God that I grew up in a family environment. I know some people have grown up in very tough environments, and I'm really sorry for that. But, I don't want to pass that on. I want to make sure that the generations that are ongoing now, mothers, raise your families with incredible love. And love will cover a multitude of sins and allow you to move forward. Love brings together tolerance, self-control, selflessness. It really is the lubrication that makes the wheels of family turn and takes the friction out. I think it was Tim Finn that wrote that song back in the 1984. There's a fraction too much friction. Well, love will get rid of that friction and keep the family moving. I just finish up with two families, good examples of families. One family brought up with a mum and dad that raised things in the right way, and another one that led their whole family into a desperate and terrible situation. The two families I refer to come out of the book of Genesis, and one is the family of Abraham, and the other family is his brother's son, Lot. And So you've got these two families, Lot's family and Abraham. It come to a time when they were living close together and they got, into each other's hair and so forth. And basically, Abraham says, "Listen, Lot, you can choose whether you want to, what land you want to live on, and we'll go and live on the other." Well, Lot being, demonstrated straight away that he was greedy and selfish, and he went for the best watered land down along the Jordan River, which and then he chose that, which happened to be the capital of that city at that time was Sodom. And so you know the story of Sodom and Gomorrah. Well, Lot moved his family down onto the well-watered plains, however, that was around Sodom, whereas Abraham had the high country, and it was a bit tougher going. But nevertheless, Abraham demonstrated good character and good skills and leadership within his family, whereas Lot kept on leading his family further and further away from that and closer to Sodom, which was quite a corrupt city. And we find that there's a terrible story in there where a couple of angels come down and visit Lot, and these are new men in town, and there's a whole gang outside that wanted to actually, attack these men and rape them and so forth. And then the terrible thing, I think, is terrible where Lot actually offers his daughters in replacement for these men. My goodness, how could he degenerate into that? And it just stands out to me an example of families where one family, Abraham, is leading and guiding, giving direction, correction, and affection to his family, whereas Lot has chosen to just simply go with the flow and go whatever he thinks is good at the time, and ends up in a terrible situation. And it's not a pretty thing. In fact, his descendants would be the Amorites. His offspring would be the Amorites, which would end up as enemies of God. This Mother's Day, that's a cheerful note, isn't it, to end up on? Yeah, right. This Mother's Day, Mother's Day, I thank you, mothers, for the direction, correction, and affection that you've given families. I thank my mother, who's passed away now and is with the Lord, but nevertheless, the direction, the correction, the affection that she gave me has lasted me all my life. Here I am in my 70s now, and I can still recall her words and saying, as long as I keep on loving you, no matter how far you roam, you'll always know where to come home. And that's true. And I thank mothers on this Mother's Day, and I salute mothers on this day. God bless you all. Have a wonderful Mother's Day. Thank you.
Your mercy never fails me, and all my days I've been held in your hand. From the moment that I wake up until I lay my head, I will sing of the goodness of God. And all my life you have been faithful. All my life you have been so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. I love your voice. You have led me through the fire, the darkest night. You were close like no other, and I've known you as a father, I've known you as a friend, and I have lived in the goodness of God all my life. And all my life you have been faithful. And all my life you have been so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing days of my life. Every breath I have